Welcome into a Tuesday, October 22nd edition of Daily Faceoff Live. I'm Tyler Yaremchuk, and he is not Frank Saravalli. He is Jonny Lazarus. Frank's in Chicago still, but Johnny swings by the other half of Morning Cup of Hockey. Johnny, how's it going?
Well, it's an honor to get the call up for today, and appreciate you having me on. I was going to drop the what's good beast, but I actually decided to let you to spare you on this one.
For those who didn't see the clip, you had John Buccigross on the show, and you were talking about like male ranking or rankings of the best
greeting dudes.
Greeting dudes. There you go. And your number one was Sup Beast, which is crazy.
It's my go-to. It's typically an awkward encounter 30% of the time, but for those that get it, it's great.
Nick Alberga is going to swing by in a bit as well. We're going to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. First, I need to let you know that our show is brought to you by Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important, which is why Fountain Tire treats your vehicle like it's their vehicle. If you need new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle, stop into Fountain Tire today and they'll sort you out. And right now you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, until December 14th. Plus save $50 or more on any service of $150. Some restrictions apply. Head to fountaintire.com for more. It's winter tire season. You got to get that sorted out. I'm sure that is absolutely not a thing for you in New York City. No one's slapping on winter tires, right, Johnny?
I don't personally, and I don't know anyone else that does so, but get your Fountain tires. They're great. So going to need them on my trips to UMass when I go do color for UMass hockey. So maybe get the Fountain Tire stuff for those drives.
There you go. Like I said, we have Nick Alberga swinging by in a little bit, but let's start the show with a little bit of talk about those primetime Leafs. Johnny, the debut of Monday Night Hockey on Amazon Prime as well, just from a viewer perspective. Did you get that down in the States? Or was
I couldn't get it.
Only?
No. Yeah, I think it's Canada only. I was watching on the FanDuel Sports Network, actually, on NHL Network. That's how I watched the game last night. But from the clips I saw, it looked pretty cool. It definitely looked different. I know warm-up didn't have any like pregame show. It was just showing like a live in-arena feed the whole time. What did you make of it? I mean, you're the one who watched it, right?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. The score bug looked kind of sweet. A little bit fewer ads as well, which I always like when watching a broadcast. I did think like I would like a pregame show. For me, like it's a game in the middle of or at the end of October. I don't need to like watch the players warm up and get the vibe of the arena. But for the most part, I thought it was really, really well done. I know Leafs fans were big fans of it. How could they not be? Their team chases Andrei Vasilevskiy in that game. And I know the joke that Alberga and others made was it was a little bit of hockey karma. But you're a guy who played, like you said, UMass. What do you make of Andrei Vasilevskiy giving Morgan Rielly the snow shower during warmups? Did much to do about nothing, or did you think this was a bit weird?
I don't know if it's a routine thing that Vasilevskiy does. I doubt it is. I mean, typically goalies have their little, things that they do before every game, and maybe Vasilevskiy does do that. And it just so happened that Rielly was standing there. Listen, I don't think Vasilevskiy picked out Morgan Rielly and was like, I'm going to go mess with that guy. Right. But I've never seen Andrei Vasilevskiy really warm up. So I'm going to look at that next time that Tampa Bay is in New York to see if he does that every game. Because then it'll be like, okay, it's nothing personal. Obviously, in this instance, it seemed a little bit like, he was trying to get in the head of Morgan Rielly. But, the Leafs had the last laugh last night.
I'll use this as a chance to maybe call goalies a little soft, because if someone did that to a goalie, they'd be freaking the hell out.
For sure. And I'm surprised that there was no response, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. But the Leafs got theirs in that game. Vasilevskiy allows 4 goals, gets pulled, and this season has not been going well for Vasilevskiy, an .878 save percentage. And I saw someone point out yesterday, they're like, hey, he hasn't been the same since he came back from injury last year. And if you go back to last season, he only had a .900 save percentage. It was a very pedestrian season for a guy who's been one of the best goalies in the league for basically getting close to a decade now. Johnny, when you look at Vasilevskiy and the way he's struggling, I think there's 2 ways you can go about it. You can say, hey, he hasn't been the same since his surgery. He's starting to get older. He's played a ton of hockey when you include playoff games as well over the last 5 seasons. I also think you can sit there and look at that Tampa Bay blue line and say, does that maybe leave you wanting a little bit more? Could this just be a product of the team in front of him not being as good as it has been for the past number of seasons? What do you make of Vasilevskiy's early season struggles?
Well, I'll tell you where it starts. I picked him to win the Vezina this year, so it's probably my fault to begin with. And the last 2 years, I picked Jake Ottinger, and he's obviously off to his best start in his career. So I'll take the blame for that one to begin with. But with Vasilevskiy, like you said, Tyler, this team is much different. Tampa's blue line, although they did get Ryan McDonagh back, they're not necessarily the the depth of a team that we saw the past couple of years, right? Like this is a team that went to the 3 straight Stanley Cup finals in 2020, 2021, 2022, and they've always been competitive, and Vasilevsky was a big part of that. But to me, it just seems like Tampa's on the back nine, right? Like this is a topic that Colby and I almost touched on at the end of the show today. We didn't have enough time to get really deep into it, so we're saving it for tomorrow. But when you think about Tampa's window, it's probably closing more than it is open, right? And you have to agree with that. I mean, anyone who's watched them play would think so. Outside of Kucherov and Hedman, Braden Point's had a good couple of years here, and Jake Gensel hasn't really gotten off to the hottest start with Tampa yet. Hasn't really found the back of the net much. I think just 1 goal thus far in the year. So this Tampa team is going to be weird. It's going to be a bit of an identity crisis, maybe at times. Typically, when they can lean on Vasilevsky, he's been the guy to answer the bell. But right now, it doesn't seem like he's going to be the one to help uplift them.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, like part of me says, well, maybe just ease off the workload a little bit. Again, he's a guy who's certainly not getting any younger, but with Jonas Johansson backing him up, I mean, right now his numbers are better than Vasilevsky, but that's not exactly a guy who you'd sit there and go, you know what, we can probably start him 38, 39 times this year and really ease off Vasilevsky. Maybe keep him, I shouldn't say 38, 39, maybe keep Johansson in the low 30s and then get Vasilevsky to the low 50s, but I'm not sure how much you can trust him. And also with the Eastern Conference, as you know, Johnny, being as competitive as it is, every game is so important. There's not exactly a lot of free spots on the bingo card. Like even a team like Columbus is 2-3 to start the year. Like there's not a lot of soft matchups that you can pick right now to go, okay, we're going to ease off Vasilevsky for a week here, only give him 1 start in the next 7 days.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me, just speaking about Tampa specifically, not only Vasilevsky, is Tampa's special teams. Last year, one of the best, I think the best power play in the entire NHL in the regular season last year. This year, they're at 13.6% right now, 27th in the league, and their PK is at 24th, converting at a 73.7 rate. So, special teams that we are used to seeing do very well is off to a slow start, but for some crazy reason, they are still scoring goals, and Kucherov is leading the way with that, 7 goals in 5 games. I know a couple empty netters that have been mixed in, but Tampa's been a weird team so far this year. 8th highest scoring team, but not getting much success in the power play. So, it's been an odd start.
Super weird start. Up next for us, let's play the percentage game. This is something I love to grill our boy Frank on, really put him to the test with his prediction skills. But there's a handful of early season statistical trends that I'm finding interesting, and I'm curious how they can play out over the course of a season. And the first one is Cale Makar. He is off to a flying start, even if the Colorado Avalanche are struggling a little bit. 12 points in 6 games for Makar. There has only been one defenseman in the last 25 years of NHL hockey to hit 100 points. It was Erik Karlsson a couple of seasons ago. Percent chance Cale Makar can accomplish that feat and hit the triple-digit mark.
I'm going to say 60%. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, listen, I've known Cale for a few years now, and I know he's not happy with his defensive game right now, but everything obviously that he's doing offensively, chipping in the way he has. I mean, half of his points are on the power play, and Colorado's power play is tied for second in the league right now. And I don't see them slowing down at all at that clip. When you look at Makar, Rantanen, McKinnon, Ross Colton, I believe, has 5 or 6 goals already on the year. Yeah, he's been hot so far to start. I don't see that production slowing down for Cale. Maybe averaging 2 points per game is going to be tough to sustain, but this guy had 90 points last year. And his team needs him to produce even more offensively this year if they're going to allow, 4, 5, 6 goals a game. So I give Cale the 60% chance of getting 100 points, just because obviously it's such a hard feat for a defenseman. But if there's one guy that can do it, it's him.
Yeah, and when
what do you say?
Yeah, I think I'll go a hair lower just because it's so hard to do. Like I'll say 55%. I'm generally in the same ballpark as you. Like the 5 best statistical seasons by a defenseman this century since the calendar flip to 2000. Makar has 2 of them. He had 90 points in 77 games last season, and a couple of years ago he had 86 points in 77 games. So hey, if he plays all 82, it's more than possible, and I think it's more than likely. But again, one D-man's done it in the last 25 years. It is really, really hard to accomplish. Your pal Joe's optimistic. He says 90%. Got another comment that says 75 as well. So people are bullish on it, but again, it's still very early in the season.
Well, they're not fully healthy yet either, right? Yep. So if they get Landeskog back, Nichushkin back, Lehkonen back, they're missing a couple key contributors offensively that can come back and really help. So if they do get fully healthy, that's only going to uplift Cale's chances.
Yeah. From a Cale to a Cole. Cole Caufield is off to a tremendous start this season. And, Frank had the take that he thinks he's a lock to score 40 this year. I think that's a pretty good bet, especially when you consider his over-under on Bet365 was down in the low 30s, which is crazy. 6 goals in 6 games for Cole Caufield. The Habs winger has a blank % chance of scoring 50.
50 is tough. 40, I gave him I would give him a 95% chance at 40. But 50, I think you got to lean more toward that. I'm giving him more than Kale, so I'd probably say like 70%. And again, that's because 50 goals is, it's tough, and he's never scored 40. Although I've seen that happen in New York. Chris Kreider had never even scored like more than 32 and then went off for 50. So it can happen, and obviously he's off to a great start, scoring a goal per game right now. And I think Cole's shooting the puck more. He looks like he's more aggressive. He looks like he's finding new angles and new areas to put the puck in the back of the net. And then you look at his line mates, Nick Suzuki and Juraj Slafkovsky, like those guys are producing as well. Maybe not as much in the goal scoring department. I know Suzuki hasn't scored yet and Slafkovsky only has 1 goal, but they're finding Cole in the areas that he needs to be in order to put the puck in. So I'm hoping he doesn't have any tonight against the Rangers, but I'd love to see Cole Caufield get 50 this year. What do you think?
I think I'll go 50-50. I'll agree with Joe in the chat. It's just for me, like for the Makar thing, even if he slumps for a little bit, you can pick up a second assist here or there. He's going to get his power play time. A slump for a goal scorer can be a lot more profound. Like you can have 5-6 games where you just don't find the back of the net. So granted, he's put himself in a tremendous spot. He's already 12-13% of the way to 15 goals, and we're not even 10% of the way through the season yet. So the pace is tremendous. I just think if a slump hits, he could go 6 to 8 games without a goal, and it could totally tank that pace he's on. Let's move along here because we do got to get moving. Nick Alberga is going to join us in a couple of minutes. Tonight is Frozen Frenzy. Jonny, all 32 teams in action, 16 games staggered perfectly throughout the night. So I thought it would be fun to build out our perfect night of viewing. What do you got? I want to go early game, a middle game, and then a late game. Give me 3 games you're keeping an eye on tonight.
You want me to give you all 3 right now?
Sure, just rattle them off for me.
All right, so I'm going Devils Lightning first at 6:45 p.m. I'm going Seattle versus Colorado at 8:30 p.m. And then to finish it off, I'm going Utah versus Ottawa, my 2 favorite teams, at 9:15 p.m.
The Utah-Ottawa one's interesting, but I want to touch on Seattle-Colorado really quickly with you. What stands out about that matchup?
Well, Seattle's actually won a sneaky 3 straight games, 4 out of the last 5, and they have 15 goals in their last 3 games. This is a team that Colby and I in our preseason preview said they're going to have trouble scoring goals, and Matty Beniers is honestly not one of the guys that's shipping in, so that's a bit of a concern. But with the way that Colorado has been defending, you got to think it's going to be a high-scoring game, right? So Seattle's finding the back of the net. The Avs have a ton of firepower up front. I think Kale, McKinnon, and Rantanen obviously get going, and Ross Colton keeps his scoring streak alive tonight in Seattle. This one's going to be a shootout. If I had to bet on a game to be the highest scoring game of the night, it would be this one. And I don't know if you remember, but I do believe that the Seattle Kraken fans hate Cale Makar. I forgot who he hit in game 5 of that series, but I know he was suspended for 1 game, and they give it to him every time that he returns to Seattle. So there should be a little bit of bad blood too in this one.
Yeah, no confirmed starters, but Daily Faceoff has Justice Annunen listed as the potential starter for the Colorado Avalanche. So I like a lot of goals there. If it's Annunen versus Grubauer, I mean, take an adjusted total. I think there's no limit to how high that one could go.
Football score.
Yeah. Totally. For me, the early game I like is between Washington and Philly. Michkov versus Ovechkin. First time those 2 players are going head to head. Washington's off to a good start. Philly's struggling a little bit here, but it'll be cool to see Michkov and Ovi go toe to toe. I got the Bruins and the Predators at 8:45 Eastern. Like Nashville's got to win eventually, right, Jonny? They can't. Like 0-6 would be insane.
But is Boston the team they're going to do it against? I don't know. Like, I don't think so. I like Boston in that game. I think Boston's the underdog too somehow.
Yeah, it is a weirdly priced game on the betting markets as well. And then the last one I have at 11 o'clock is the Kings and the Golden Knights. It is crazy that there's a hockey game starting at 11 o'clock Eastern tonight. But between the Kings and the Golden Knights, like both identical records to start the year, both teams that came into the year with tempered expectations compared to where they're usually at. I think this is a really, really good test for the LA Kings and a chance for them to kind of go like, hey, everyone who was kind of writing us off saying we're going to be the team that's going to fall out of the playoffs in the West or has the best chance of falling out of the playoffs in the West, this is a good chance for you to show that your little 3-2-1 start, although that's 500, it's not a fluke and you belong with the big dogs in the Pacific.
I would hammer Vegas in that game though. Just a human nature effect. And again, I'm not looking at any stats right now. That's not a game I've looked at yet for tonight, but talking to guys around the league and just knowing, how players typically feel, this is the end of LA's 7-game road trip, I believe. They've been on the road now for, I believe, 3 weeks. So it's only human nature to look forward to going home. And sometimes in those games, your mind can slip. And Vegas has now lost 3 straight games. So this is like a get right game for Vegas after they're coming home after 3 straight road games. So I'm looking at the Golden Knights to dominate this one against LA. Like I think this is going to be a 3-4 goal difference.
Last spot I want to hit on with you before we get to the All 32 today, and that is out in the Atlantic Division once again. We started in the Atlantic. We end our first 4 topics in the Atlantic, and it was weird coming into the season, looking at betting markets, looking at people's predictions, and maybe it's because they went to the Cup final back-to-back years, but it feels like people backed off the Florida Panthers a little bit. And I know, they lost Brandon Montour, but aside from that, they're bringing back a lot of the same roster, and they're off to a great start, 4-2-1 on the year. They're sitting atop the division at this point. There's been no hangover in Florida, and that's, including the fact Matt Tkachuk hasn't played in every game. They've dealt with some injuries early on. Were you surprised that maybe people weren't as bullish on the Panthers coming into this year? And do you think they have an outside shot at repeating or even going on another run?
I don't know if they can go on another run just because they've played so much hockey, although we did see the Tampa Bay Lightning get to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. Florida is one of those teams now. What they've become is similar to like a Boston or a Carolina, where no matter who wears the jersey, you know exactly the standard they're going to play to. And that's just, everyone throws around the word culture, right? Like that's the big thing in hockey is this team has a great culture. That room has a great culture. But Florida, being in the room last year covering the Rangers-Panthers series, you really feel it. Like that room is incredible. And one thing I think that does go underrated, though, I know you mentioned Brandon Montour, but losing Ryan Lomberg and Nick Cousins too, like what it did to that room also is a sneaky big effect, in my opinion, because those 3 love to be the pranksters around the room, and that could be something that just like plays in later in the year. But right now with Borowski, with Sam Reinhart, leading the way that he is, Reinhart, does he have a point in every single game this year? I think he does, right? So, he's been off to a hot start. Sam Bennett's gotten off to a hot start. I mean, this Florida team, you know exactly what to expect, but I don't have them getting back to the Stanley Cup final this year. Obviously, they'll be competitive in the playoffs. They always are, but man, I've been really high on Toronto. Like I really have, sticking in the Atlantic Division. Like I do think the Leafs look a little bit different.
That is a tremendous segue to our big segment today. You also said culture, which is another fantastic segue into what we're going to get to with our guy, Nick Alberga. Let's dig into it with the All 32. Nick Alberga from the Leafs Nation and Leafs Morning Take joins us on the show. First off, that picture you have of Rosie behind you is so good.
Classic, right? How good is that?
That is really good. The flow on Rosie, tremendous. All right, let's start with again maybe a bit of a basic one, because last night was a great night for Leafs fans. Optimism is really high right now, but I want to know what you're seeing that's different from a team coached by Craig Berube that the Leafs weren't getting when they were coached by Sheldon Keefe.
Well, first and foremost, guys, I think it's consistency. Like it's pretty interesting that the last couple of years, the Leafs have been one of the better teams in the NHL statistically in the regular season. But on any given night, you had no clue which Maple Leafs team was going to show up. And so far, so good through 6 games in this season. Every game they showed up, they started on time. Pardon the cliches, but they're playing this like physical north-south type, type brand of hockey where it's like a grind and it's less skill and more just like go to work and get the lunch pail out, which I think is kind of cool. It's not as fun to watch. They're grinding it out a bit more, but I think on a shift by shift basis, it's got like a bit of a different feel in terms of the way they want to play and the style they want to play right now.
Johnny?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. But I also do disagree partially on last night. I thought last night's game was insanely fun to watch. But maybe that's because I have the Leafs to win the President's Trophy this year, so I was kind of laughing it up a little bit last night. But I think that second line of McMahon, Domi, and Nylander, they were flying last night. I mean, those 3 were unbelievable.
Yeah, I said it on today's show. Like in general, I thought the Leafs bullied the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is weird to say because how many times has Tampa just took it to Toronto in recent memory, including the Stanley Cup playoffs. But in general, Johnny, I would say the top 6 is looking really, really nice right now. You got Nyes, Matthews, and Martin on the top line. Then McMahon with Domi and Nylander. I think just bringing a bit of a different look. I love the speed factor. They scored a big-time goal on the forecheck last night. Like Bob McMahon goes from a guy who was healthy scratched in the season opener, and now he's been producing offense game in and game out. So it just gives the Leafs a bit of a different look. And I think it's quite noticeable early on what Craig Berube's trying to do line-wise, and that's spread the wealth. That's why you're seeing like a John Tavares and a Max Pacioretty play together on the third line. I think it just opens up a different dynamic when you're getting goal scoring up and down your lineup the way they've been producing early on in this season.
Willie Nylander looked exceptional last night. Joe's in the chat says Nylander could have had 3. We played the percentage game a couple of minutes ago. Let me throw one your way. Percent chance William Nylander can be a 100-point player for the Leafs. Had 98 last season.
Yeah, I would probably say 85 to 90%.
Wow.
I obviously have to leave a little room for injury and stuff like that. But I think the way he is playing right now, it's really, really good news. Like if you want to correlate it to what's happening in Vancouver right now with Elias Pettersson, who once again looks disinterested. I think it's easy to get paid in this league, but once you get paid, how do you play? I think early returns so far in the Nylander contract have been outstanding. I thought he was good in the select games he played in the playoffs. I think he's had a really good start. He's getting better and better as the game goes by. So I think there's a high percent chance, 85 to 90. If he can stay healthy here, he gets to 100 points this season finally.
Mm-hmm. And Johnny, do you have another one?
Well, I was just going to say, if the Leafs get their power play going a little bit more, there's no doubt. He's flirted with it, I feel like, the past couple of years, right? Like Nylander's been above a point per game, I think, 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row?
That's exactly it. It's interesting because even last year he was on pace before he signs the contract. I think he was on pace for 117, 119 points. All of a sudden signs the contract, went to the skids a bit, but found his way late in the season. But just to piggyback off your point on the power play, I think you guys have the luxury of covering two teams who more times than not have pretty damn good power plays. This Leafs power play is quickly becoming a story, I think, for the wrong reasons. I think they're fortunate. They're playing a really good brand 5-on-5 and winning hockey games and getting saves. But to me, guys, and maybe you can speak to this, it makes no sense how you have that much star power and you're really, really struggling. They're 3 for 17 or 3 for 20, on the power play so far this season.
The Oilers are one of 3 teams in the NHL that have fewer than 2 power play goals to start the year. It's like
crazy.
Them, the Ducks, and I think maybe I forget the third team, but
the Sabres and Ducks have not scored a power play goal yet.
Yeah, so it's the Sabres.
Sabres are over 21 on the year.
Jeez,
wild! It's wild. Last one I
Philip
have for you.
Gustafsson has a power play goal.
True.
It's actually a really good point. Last one I had for you was just on Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who I was really impressed with last night. It is wild to think back, and I mean the roller coaster his career's been. Vancouver pays a boatload to get him, sign him, big deal. And then they're buying him out. And it's kind of like, man, is he going to be out of the NHL right away? Just a few years after signing a massive ticket, goes to Florida. It was a bit of a reclamation project and it works out really well. And then he signs in Toronto and it's kind of like, okay, they paid him. And can he repeat what he did in Florida? He is off to a flying start.
He is. You got to be very careful. Obviously, we're just 6 games into this thing, but the track record is certainly there last year. Like, I think the individual who deserves the most credit here is Paul Maurice, unequivocally. If you watch the second half of last season, into the Stanley Cup playoffs, into the Stanley Cup final, night and day, the difference you are seeing in Oliver Ekman-Larsson's game. I think the bonus right now is that he's providing offense. He's running the first power play unit, but physically, to me, has been the big story. If you guys recall, early on in his career, he was a number 1 defenseman for the Coyotes, known as more of a softer player, really didn't engage contact. It's been the absolute difference on Toronto's back end so far. I mean, even the hit last night, I know he just got fined $5,000 for the hit on Gensel, but just the snarl he's playing with, the physicality, like the tenacity, it's been a breath of fresh air for the Maple Leafs blue line, because I think people knew to an extent what they were getting, but how complete his game is what really has impressed me thus far. He's consistently playing more minutes than, Morgan Rally and others on that back end. It's been a really, really good signing thus far here.
Nick, appreciate your time as always. You can find his work on the Leafs Nation YouTube with Leafs Morning Take and online at theleafsnation.ca. Nick, thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Moving along to our daily face-off inbox question. It's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. You can get a custom ring built and delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program. It all comes with their unbeatable pricing policy. Check out their large selection of Canadian lab-grown diamonds, mine diamonds, and you don't pay until 2025 with their instant in-store financing, OAC. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. Let's go to the YouTube where Natty's in with one, Johnny. Any coaches you're willing to say are on the hot seat already, just 6 to 8 games into the year?
Well, off the top of my head, I felt like coming into the year, Mike Sullivan would be the one, but I feel like now, and obviously after talking with Colby and many people around the league, it seems like Sullivan will finish out his time with Sid and Malkin and Letang. It just seems like that's the right way to go about it. But you'd have to look right now at Nashville and point your finger at Andrew Brunette, right? I feel like he's the obvious one if the Predators continue to slump to start the year. I wouldn't say the Preds are like they're weird, right? Because last year was kind of like figuring out who they were, and now all of a sudden, are they in a win now window? They probably are, right? Just because of who they brought in this summer and the age that they're all at, and they start 0-5 to kick off the year. So there has to be no one else that comes to the top of mind. I feel like than Andrew Brunette right now. What do you think?
Yeah, like again, you look at some of the teams that are off to, less than ideal starts. Philly hasn't been great, but John Tortorella is so ingrained with what they're building there. There's no way they're getting rid of John Tortorella. San Jose, they made a coaching change this summer. Buffalo just brought in Lindy Ruff. You're not pulling the plug on that 2 or 3 months into the year. Derek Lalonde's one. I think coming into the year, he would have been the odds-on favorite to be the first coach fired, but Detroit's 2-3. They've only played 5 games. I mean, that's a conversation to have, I think, a month from now, not right now. So I did find it interesting that Frank brought up Mike Sullivan earlier this week on the DFO rundown, but I think you make a good point that it sounds like they'll let him play out the run with kind of all those guys he won the cups with. But yeah, Sullivan, if things get bad in Pittsburgh, it'd be interesting. But that does actually tie into the daily bets I have, brought to you by Bet365, the largest sports betting platform globally. You can find out more and get in on a wide range of markets by downloading the app and using that promo code at the bottom, Daily365. It's all capitals. It's all one word, DAILY 365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I think the narrative around the Penguins is interesting right now, Johnny. Everyone's panicking. Tristan Jarry, there's talk, would they waive him? What's going on? But they're 3-4 to start the year. The results, like straight up money line wise, have actually not been that bad. And they roll into Calgary, who I understand is hot, 4-0-1. But I don't think Calgary's staying hot for all that long. I think they're a team that's going to be close to the bottom of the standings, a top 5 pick in next year's draft. I don't mind taking a surprising, although slightly underdog in the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight. So that's my first money line play. The second one I got is the over in Toronto and Columbus. I think Toronto, second of back-to-backs, could be a little bit loose. They have to travel as well. Columbus has been a good over bet so far this season as well. So give me the over in Toronto, Columbus, and the Penguins money line. Either of those two stand out to you? You riding with me?
I like those picks. I don't personally have them in my slate tonight. Obviously there are a lot of games to pick from since there are 16 throughout the course of the night. Yeah. I am going to put together like a 16 game parlay, obviously, since everyone else has to, probably after this show is complete. But these aren't the 2 games that I personally looked at, but I do like these angles that you're taking. If I were to bet on those 2 games, those are probably the 2 ways I'd go.
It's a great parlay night, like you just said. I got a goal scorer parlay. I don't mind this evening. Jack Hughes has 1 goal in 8 games. I feel like Hughes is due to start finding the back of the net and scoring bunches. If I like the over in Toronto, Columbus, you got to roll with Austin Matthews. And Zach Hyman was a 50-goal guy who is goalless through 6 games. Oilers on home ice, where their power play is usually a tick better, and their power plays also probably due. So I think Hughes and Hyman are due. I think Matthews is hot. Those 3 together, plus 846. And yes, everyone's got to do it. You got to put $1 at least on a 16-leg parlay. Mine, I will spare you the painful details of going through every pick. $1 into 34,000, Johnny. I mean, drinks on me if it hits.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing the $1 probably for like 100K if that adds up. It's just gonna be fun to watch. And again, like the worst thing that could happen is like your first bet of the parlay loses. Kind of just like you want to at least be alive through like 4 games,
Yeah.
But yeah, no better night to place a parlay than tonight. That's for sure.
All right, let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. I thought this was a fun little lighthearted moment from the Anaheim Ducks broadcast the other day. Let's give it a roll.
Back in Orange County since mid-July because he and his lovely wife Sid welcomed their 3rd child back in August. So congratulations to them on their new baby boy named Nash. Now, I never know whether Ryan's being serious, guys, and I asked him what Nash is short for. He said National League. So I don't know if that's true. Either way, I love it. He took full credit for baby Nash sleeping most of the night. He said he's a sleep wizard, but I think Sid Strome is a saint.
We buying or selling on naming your kid Nash, short for National League.
With Ryan Strome, I could believe it. He's a really goofy guy, one of the nicest guys out there, and definitely a creative guy as well. So I wouldn't put it past him. How about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him either.
Yeah.
I think that's an all-time hockey guy move. You're on the third kid as well. Like the creative juices maybe aren't quite there in terms of naming, but going Nash, short for national. I thought that
I kind
was
of
a
like
fun
it.
one.
I
I don't hate it either. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Big shout out to Nick Alberga for swinging by. Big shout out to Jonny Lazarus for filling in for Frank Saravalli. You can watch him Monday through Thursday on Morning Cup of Hockey right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. And a big shout out to our friends at Fountain Tire. Enjoy Frozen Frenzy tonight, everyone. And myself and Frank will be back tomorrow at noon Eastern. Chat with you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.